I used to do door-to-door sales, and I was working with another friend of mine. And door-to-door sales, I mean, it's punishing. It's cruel and unusual punishment. And I was a little boy knocking on the door. Hello, would you like to buy a nice working television set? No money down? No! Bam! They slammed the door in your face. And the friend of mine that was working with me, they slammed the door in his face, and I looked back, and he was going to the car. He said, I can't do this. And he sat down in the car, and he said, you go ahead, I'll be here when you get back. Now, he had a mother and father to take care of him. My mother was ill. I am adopted. I was hungry. I had to go on. I learned something about myself, that when you step into your fears, somebody said, it was Winston Churchill, he said that courage is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. When you step into your fears and continue to push yourself to go on, something happens for you. It will enable you to transcend yourself. I went to the next store. You like to buy a nice working television? No! Bam! Went to the next one. No! Bam! After a while, I no longer took it personal. And I began to play a game. I said, well, I know there's a yes out here somewhere, and I'm going to keep on till I find it. And I'm not going home until I do. And I continued to knock on doors. And then somebody eventually would say yes. And I said, are you sure? And I would go in there and I would get the sale. When you have something you want to do, if you don't develop the courage to do that which has been given you to do, and you spend a lot of time going around trying to convince other people or trying to get their approval, what will happen is that you will lose your nerve, and other people will convince you that what you're doing doesn't have any value, and you'll give up on your dream.
One of my friends woke up one day, David, and he said, sitting at the yacht club, having a drink, sitting sort of in a fog, something spoke to him and said, what could you really have done if you hadn't have been in this condition the last 15, 20 years of your life? You know, he wasn't like an out-and-out alcoholic, but he just, he drank too much. And he started thinking about that. What could I have really accomplished? He wasn't bad enough to where he couldn't function. But he said that day when he thought back of what he really could have done if he hadn't have sort of stumbled around in a bit of a fog all those years, how his life would be. And he said from that day on, he never touched another drink of alcohol. Then he died about 5 years after that. But his wife said to me that last 5 years were the greatest years of our marriage, when that one day he woke up and said, wow, this is not good. What could I have done if I hadn't have been sort of semi-conscious these last 15, 20 years? And that was a very special day for him. Sometimes it's a cataclysmic event. Sometimes it's that moment. Who can really explain it? Only the person it happens to, I guess, can really explain what that inner voice was that says, I'm on the wrong track here. I wonder what I could really do if I kicked this habit or got rid of this obsession. So those are the days that turn your life around.
While life-changing days can be as cataclysmic as never touching another drop of alcohol, or as simple as lying to a Girl Scout, every life-changing day holds something in common. They all involve an internal battle inside our own heads, a battle that must be won.
Doug Williams played for the Washington Redskins, quarterback. John Elway of the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl. Everybody was talking about Elway. After the Super Bowl, when Doug Williams made a historic passing game, they asked him, said, how were you able, in spite of all of that negative publicity saying that you couldn't win, how did you do it? He said, I ignored my critics. I just didn't pay any attention to them. I ignored myself because they kept on saying it so much. There were times I doubted whether or not I can do what I needed to do. There's a Doug Williams in everybody here. There's greatness in you. And you've got to learn how to tune out the critics outside and the critic inside. And since I'm going to do this, I'm going to harness my will, and I'm not going to let anything stop me. I deserve this. I'm going to do it until. And this friend, I told him, said, start increasing your calls. I said, I make 100 calls a day. I got a callus in my ear. My ear's kind of dark. You can't see it, but it's there. His sales have increased. He's working harder now.
Now, here was my first goal when I started, and that was part-time. I wanted to equal on my profits part-time what I was earning on my full-time job. This is called the magic of part-time. It is so thrilling for people to start working the business part-time, because now you can work on profits, and it doesn't take very long. If you'll really concentrate on those 10, 12, 15 hours a week, it won't be long if you really do it right and learn some of the skills I'm going to talk about. It won't be long until you can be earning as much part-time working on your fortune as you are full-time working on your job. I did that in less than 6 months. Now I've got an incredible invitation. I found a way part-time to work on my fortune, and I'm making as much money at that as I am on my full-time job. Would you like to hear my story? It was incredible. Now here was my second goal, to make twice as much money part-time working on my fortune as I was working full-time on my job. And I reached that in less than a year, making twice as much money part-time working on my fortune as I was full-time working on my job. Now I've got an incredible invitation that won't quit. I found a way through a unique opportunity to work part-time on my fortune, and I'm now earning twice as much money as I am working full-time on my job. Would you like to hear my story? Do you imagine anybody would say, no, I don't care to hear your story? No. Everybody I said that to said, wow, yes, what are you doing? I said, I'm glad you asked. Let me tell you. Now, when I started making twice as much money part-time as full-time, here's my dilemma. I didn't want to go full-time. And why not go full-time? And the reason was because I didn't want to give up my electrifying story. Right? It was so powerful, nobody could resist the invitation to at least take a look. I didn't want to give it up. And I hung on for I don't know how long until it was, almost insane. And then finally, reluctantly, I gave up my full-time job. But now you can imagine the thrill and excitement of going to work full-time on my fortune. It was incredible.
Dreams are what caused thousands of people to leave their homes and families and start over in a land where anything was possible. To this day, dreams continue to bring people to our land of opportunity, to a country where you can start with little and end up with a lot, to America. Don't you sometimes wonder why so many immigrants who come to America can build a new life and a fortune while many of the people who were born here are barely surviving? They have a dream, a defined goal, ambition. I'm sure you've heard the saying, fish and company start to stink in 3 days. Well, that was one of hundreds of Ben Franklin's comments on life. Another was, diligence is the mother of good luck. You know, it's amazing how hard-working, smart-working people have all the luck. We sometimes hear of a brand new musical group, an overnight success. They must have been in the right place at the right time, knew the right people, had a friend to help them out. But if you've ever watched an interview with some of these folks, you'll probably hear that their overnight success took several years. Diligence is the mother of good luck. Now, in addition to these witticisms, Ben Franklin gave us 3 principles of success and ambition that have withstood the test of time. Number 1, happiness doesn't come from big pieces of great success, but from small advantages hammered out day by day. What Mr. Franklin is saying here is that we must be happy with what we've got when we're in pursuit of what we want. Too often we say, oh, I'll be happy when I just get that promotion. I'll be happy when I just land that contract. I'll be happy when I just have more money. I'll be happy when I just what? You won't be any happier when you reach your goals than you are right now. It just doesn't work that way. Abraham Lincoln said it best. He said, you'll be as happy as you make up your mind to be. Right now, whether you're on your way, whether you've already gotten there, you'll be as happy as you make up your mind to be now. Right now. Being happy on the way doesn't mean you can't aim for great things. After all, look at everything Franklin accomplished in his lifetime. It means that big achievements come one small advantage at a time. It means that you've got to enjoy the journey. It means that you must enjoy and take pride in your little accomplishments. It means enjoying who you are becoming in pursuit of your eager desire, every day, every single day. Ben Franklin's second principle said that life is plastic. Within each of us is the power to mold ourselves and mold our environment. It is up to each of us to begin this molding process with a final product in mind. And it is within our power to work it and form it every minute, every day, every month, every year. By using your mind and your abilities and your attitude to work a little each day on molding your life, You'll soon see how magnificent your power is to gain those small advantages each day. The little steps it takes to build up to success. Principle number 3. Success is a pleasure. If what you are doing today isn't satisfying, gratifying, guess what? You're really not successful. If you are not fulfilled with what you are doing today, you cannot possibly be successful. It doesn't matter how many worldly possessions you may have, how many cars, how many toys, how much money. If you're not happy with your life as it is, you cannot be successful. Now, I know that success is a relative term. It means different things to different people. To a school kid, success may mean a star on top of his latest test. To a homemaker, it probably means that she has a well-run household and a wonderful family. To an outside professional, it's most likely the thrill of closing a major contract, or the pride in accepting a performance bonus, or being named the top producing salesperson. But the one thing you will hear from everyone who is successful is that they are happy with who they are and what they are doing. They are happy, content, satisfied. Success is a pleasure.
We've been victims of weapons of mass distractions. And my children behind me, that reminds me. Took a minute. Well, I try and sit down. You either do or you don't. It's a process to achieve mastery. It's a process. And quitting does not make it any faster. You got to be willing to go all in for you, for your family, for a better life, for freedom. Where you're calling your own shots, where I just got tired of somebody telling me what time to be there, how long I could have a lunch break for, how much I'm worth. I had to ask for permission to go on vacation. I remember one time I did all the right things and asked in advance for vacation, and then he said no. Why? Y'all don't have to answer that. I just said no. And I remember going back to my desk, and I wrote probably 600 times, I'm getting up and out of here. Nobody's going to treat me like I'm a child, like I'm nothing. I remember one time they cut my salary, said, you making too much money. Excuse me? I remember at the time, remember now, I'm 76. If you were an African American, you could not buy a newer car than the person you were working for. They would fire you. You have done so many demeaning things to us. That's why Richard Wright said, the impulse to dream has been slowly beaten out of me through the experiences of life. It's a miracle we are not crazy. It's a miracle. That's why you got to be hungry. And this day where we are right now, the people that are evil, the people that are of darkness, the people that are going all out to stop us, to hold us down, we got to be more determined and stronger and be willing to do whatever it takes to live our dreams and create a future for our children. You got to be stronger than the forces working against you. Can't take any breaks. No, absolutely not. This is the new way of being. This is different. This is a fight. I remember I was at a fight at Douglas Elementary School. I'll never forget with a guy. And during that year, they had a saying called time out. If you want to get involved in a conversation, you say time out, everybody stop, and then you get your point in. I was fighting with this guy, and one of my shoes came off. I said, time out, held my head, a hand up.
Hi, welcome back to Mind Control. Hope you enjoy the video.
You, early on, I don't know, 2012, 2013, seemed to be a proponent. Then you kind of soured on it. Where are you now? Are we a proponent, not a proponent? How do you think about it?
I do own a small amount of Bitcoin, and the reason I did it was I was teaching. I'm a guest lecturer at Harvard, MIT, Notre Dame, Temple, Waterloo, McGill. I teach graduating cohorts of engineers. And at my last Harvard meeting regarding this sector, the class challenged me to buy not just Bitcoin, but just get involved in cryptocurrency. Because their argument was, look, I have a 5% weighting in gold. Each quarter, I have bullion, which I store and I pay to store it. And I also use ETFs to balance each quarter to up or down to 5%. And it's been a good stabilizer against, inflation. And you've seen gold's had a big move lately, being concerned about inflation. So was Bitcoin. But Bitcoin was originally sold to me as a counterbalance to the equity market. In other words, it would move in a different direction. So if you had a big correction in the stock market, theoretically, Bitcoin would go the other way and it would protect your assets. That's not true. It has a very heavy correlation to the stock market. It too achieves new highs when the market achieves new highs. And when the markets correct, it too corrects. So it's very volatile. You saw it dip $3,000 last week. It's back up. It's moving all around the place. So I would argue it's fair enough. I have a couple of questions for you to answer and everybody that's listening. Why is it that only one cryptocurrency gets this designation, Bitcoin? Because if you bought a basket of cryptocurrencies 2 years ago, and there's many, many, many of them, you haven't made a lot of money. There's simply nothing like Bitcoin. And so it's the only one.
Wait, let's talk about that for 1 second. So if you think of an economy, right? Take the U.S. economy, for example. There's only one currency, right? The U.S. dollar. If you think of euro, right, there's one currency that is the nation state currency or kind of the selected currency, right? And if you kind of go to the global economy, right, there's really the global reserve currency, which is the dollar. And kind of each micro economy has their own currency. If you think of kind of the digital economy, right, you talked a lot about digitizing the world. The digital economy doesn't have a native currency, right? So if you were talking to somebody like a Jack Dorsey and ask him why is he so bullish on Bitcoin, what he would actually say is the first native currency of the internet or the digital world is Bitcoin. Now, the same thing applies, though, that you're not going to have 10 currencies, right? You're only going to have one currency that is native to that environment. And so it becomes this really interesting thing where if you think of it as an economy, right, Bitcoin does become that global reserve currency of the digital economy. Right.
Listen, on that, I totally agree, but that has not happened yet. Here's the problem. Let's say I want to use Bitcoin as a currency to make a large asset purchase. So just theoretically, I want to buy some real estate in Switzerland, okay? I want it to be above board. I'm not trying to do it on a clandestine basis. If today I wanted to send $1 million over to Switzerland, I would have to disclose why. I'd have to get permission. I'd have to notify, the banks. They would have to notify the regulators that this transfer is occurring, and I could purchase the land. If I tried to do that with Bitcoin, the problem is the seller is not willing to take the volatility risk of Bitcoin. So if you're valuing, a chateau at $10 million US or 10 million Swiss francs, and you want to pay in Bitcoin, you have to somehow guarantee that when the conversion hits and it goes back to Swiss francs or US dollars, that the seller gets the agreed upon amount. That tells me the sellers do not have the confidence to do large transactions yet in Bitcoin. The other issue with it is I agree with your premise that we could get an international global currency that I could avoid exchange fees. In other words, when I want to go buy something in British pounds, I have to pay the conversion fee from the US dollar, which I do all the time because I have an ETF in England and I have one in euro and I have one in Swiss francs. So I have that major headache. I wish I could just do it with Bitcoin. I can't. And so the reason is the regulators in these countries don't agree yet that Bitcoin is the standard. So if all the regulators agreed that Bitcoin was the standard for the globe, you would be 100% correct. But that is not the case right now. I totally agree with your premise that the globe needs a digital currency. 100% would I agree. If you told me the Swiss and the Euro and the American and the Canadian, Australian governments agreed to whatever that is, I would put up to 20% of my portfolio in it, because then I could move across those geographies easily without paying all the fees associated with converting from one currency to another. Love that idea. Now, that was attempted as a payment service with Facebook, as you recall, an initiative that started early last year that went nowhere so far. But that was a great idea because they wanted approval from the government. But the Fed didn't give them that, and the SEC didn't either, not yet. But I think it's inevitable. You're correct. But you have to bet, if you're betting on Bitcoin, if you're buying it today at 18,000, whatever it is, that is going to be the de facto currency, and I don't think you have enough assuredness of that yet.
Absolutely. And I think what's really interesting is, like, you really highlighted an important point, which is the Bitcoin ETF, right? Because people in the Bitcoin community, what they would argue is, there's companies that have bought Bitcoin, so you can buy the companies and kind of get indirect exposure. There's things like the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, which really is kind of this, again, you get an ETF-like product, but it's not actually an ETF. In international exchanges, you can get ETPs and things like that, but there hasn't been that ETF. And I think many people who listen to this that come from the Bitcoin world will actually be surprised to understand that traditional investors, the ETF is this big kind of breaking of the dam or kind of approval point that will allow a lot of capital to flow in that just is sitting on the sideline saying, hey, this is interesting, but I'm not going to buy it until we have that kind of approval or check mark, right?
Oh, what I would like, and the reason I suggest an ETF, I'm very comfortable with ETFs and I live in that world. The majority of my money invested is in ETFs and the ones I've created myself. OUSA, OGIG, OEUR, OUSM. They've been very good capsules of preservation of wealth for me because I helped design them myself. What I would like to have in a cryptocurrency would give me the top 7 cryptocurrencies, put them into an ETF wrapper, and let me invest in it with liquidity so that I can, if I want to buy $1 million worth of it in the morning and sell $1 million in the afternoon, I can do that in an ETF format. But to me, I don't believe that you can only have one successful cryptocurrency. There must be the idea that there's other and alternative ways, Ethereum and others, that would also benefit from the overall move to a cryptocurrency payment system, preservation of wealth vehicle, whatever it's going to be. And I would prefer to own them in a probably market cap weighted basis in an ETF. That to me would make a lot of sense. And frankly, I'm not the only person that says this. Many others would. But when you go to the regulator, like the Winklevoss twins have done, and I think many others have applied for these applications, I even looked at it once, never went anywhere with it because the regulator basically said no. The importance of the institutional investor long term to support a sector. You want that institutional investor supporting Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. They're not there yet. It's a slow creep into it, but you can't deny the success of Bitcoin this year. But it's just this year. What happens if there's a correction next year? That's the issue institutions have.
A lady said to me that I met once in New York. She was vice president of this company. She made big money. I don't think she finished her high school education. She was still young, with a young family. And I said to her, how did you get here? This is a tough business. You make big money. You didn't graduate from high school. What happened? And she said, well, let me tell you part of the story. She said, years ago, one day I asked my husband for $10. And he said, what for? She said, by the end of that day, I had promised myself that I would never, ever ask for money again. And she said, yes, I am vice president. Yes, I do make big money. Yes, I am young. Yes, I did not graduate from high school. But she said, I promise you, Mr. Rohn, from that day until this, I have never asked for money again. She said, I started searching for opportunity, found it, started taking some classes, learned the skills, totally changed my life. I'm sure she would say that was one of the days that turned her life around.
There is a day, seemingly like any other, when everything changes. It's the day when you make the decisions, once and for all, to walk a new road toward the goals that, until that fateful day, have only been misty dreams. It's the day you say, I've had it with living a life of poor health, an empty bank account, and broken promises, where you're suddenly filled with the resolve to do whatever it takes to finally live the life you have always known you are capable of living. It's the day when you're filled with the awareness that time is precious and that each day that passes by unnoticed is like releasing a helium balloon into the sky. Soon it will be a distant memory, never to be seen again. It's the day you decide to seize those precious moments and make every one of them count. It's the day that turns your life around.
You've got to do this. I was going to give a presentation, and this voice inside of me saying, you can't do this. You don't have everything it takes. I shut up. I'm behind on my bills, and you're telling me what I can't do. I have got to do it. You'll get scared sometimes. Your mind will go blank on you. Some people you will allow to unnerve you. And you wonder, what's wrong with me? I'm not crazy. That's why you've got to learn to make a conscious, deliberate, determined effort to stand up inside yourself. Working on yourself, watching that inner dialogue, it will determine the quality of your life. I don't believe this. I know this. I've had a challenge of losing weight. I'm walking through the airport, this voice say, why don't you have some M&M peanuts? No! Well, just one. Then after you eat that, you might as well have a Snicker now, you sucker. I mean, it's challenging. My mother fixed the kind of sweet potato pie you can't eat with your shoes on. Have to take your shoes off so you can wiggle your toes. It sticks on my fingers. It says, eat it. One little bite won't hurt. That voice, constantly. Little demons from Colonel Sanders driving my car in there. I had to say, no. No, no, no. I'll diet tomorrow. I saw a skinny man get hit by a truck.
sometimes from a delightful experience or a tragic experience. It can be the day that changes everything. For me, it was the Girl Scout that knocked on my door when I was 25 years old and gave me the big presentation about Girl Scout cookies, and I wanted to buy. She said, it's only $2, several flavors. And with a big smile, she politely asked me to buy. And I wanted to. Big problem, I didn't have $2 in my pocket. So I didn't want to tell her that, right? I'm a grown man. I'm 25 years old. I've been to 1 year of college. I've got a little family going. So I decided next best to lie to her. I said, look, I've already got lots of Girl Scout cookies. I bought some, and we still haven't eaten all of them. They're in the house. She said, oh, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. And she leaves. When she leaves, I say to myself, I don't want to live like this anymore. I mean, how low can you get? Right? Lying to a Girl Scout, that's about as low as it gets. So I promised myself that day it would never happen again. That was a life-changing day for me, recognizing that I was not in a good position. I must start making my search. A guy climbs the stairs, and there's about 40 stairs to climb, and he finally gets to the top, sits down, and he's out of breath, and he says, wow, this is not good. I've got to do something about my health. So it can be something that simple. So he starts a little research program and decides to get his health in order, develop a good nutritional program, whatever. And from that day on, he says, I'm not going to be out of breath anymore.
Some of you know what I'm talking about. Raise your hand if you know that. That voice is awesome. So you have got to stand up to that voice. When you're working on something you want to achieve, you have got to stand up to that voice. You've got to sell yourself every day on your abilities, on what you're doing, on the goal that you want to reach. You've got to sell yourself every day, every day, every day. According to your level of belief, it will manifest itself in what you're doing. Whatever we have right now, whatever we're demonstrating in our lives, is a result of what we believe subconsciously that we deserve. And part of increasing that belief level is that you have got to convince yourself every day. You've got to sell yourself. I do a lot of training for many corporations, and I conduct sales seminars, and I've heard all kind of guys doing techniques and training people techniques of how to close sales and how to work with and begin to control the sale and how to ask for the close. Let me share something with you. You can learn all the techniques in the world. If you don't believe in yourself, it won't happen for you. I learned all of it. So that's why I do a training called Focus on the Seller. You've got to focus on you. And as you convince you, as you sell yourself every day, every day, every day, you will begin to see a difference in the things that you're doing. Selling yourself on your ability to perform a job, to achieve a certain objective. Telling yourself every day, here I go again, and I got what it takes. This is my day, and nothing out here is going to stop me. And when you go out there, life, say, come over here. Say it again. Well, I'll be back tomorrow. That brings me to the next thing. It takes courage to act. Part of being hungry when you've been defeated, it takes courage to start over again.